morning, or well, good afternoon. I'm still on morning. Welcome, everyone. Excited to be here. Thanks for joining the OREA YPN webinar. And of course, we're talking about all about marketing budgets and panel. So we've got myself, Lisa Patel, also as the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board President. And along with me, I'm going to pass the torch over to David.
Hey everybody, nice to have you guys on the call today. Lisa, thanks for the introduction there. Basically, I'm David Kurt. I'm running a boutique brokerage in Sudbury, Ontario. That's north of Toronto for any of those people that don't follow the greater Ontario map. Myself, I started a team probably about 7 years ago. I was with Coldwell Banker. We were pretty successful over there. We got fourth in Canada. My last year I was with Coldwell, and then we went on, and I've always wanted to build something bigger. So I started my own brokerage with kind of a team feel to it, and I'm excited to kind of share some of our strategies and what we've done from some of the marketing behind the scenes and what I've done early on, and then what shifted as I've kind of grown and ran a team. So next I'll pass the microphone over to Jen as well.
Hey, I'm Laura Tourangeau. I am the incoming president for the Chatham-Kent Association of Realtors. I'm also the broker of record at RE/MAX Chatham-Kent. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you guys about marketing today. That's actually business planning season is one of my favorite things. So great timing, and yeah, looking forward to sharing some insight with all of you.
Thanks, guys. And I thought before we even dive deep into things, we got to make some noise. We got to get everybody excited. So I brought my favorite tools. So if you've ever watched any of my sessions, I've got this famous bell because, of course, Trepp just finished celebrating 100 years. And so let's begin. So where do we want to start?
Little dance party, right?
That's the next session afterwards. Shh.
I guess
yeah, let's break it down. What are you guys doing in the marketing world right now? And I like how Laura tagged on that. The idea of business planning right now is hopefully that's what you guys are all been doing or in the process of doing right now. And we're giving our thought to what our 2020 looked like as a wrap up and our 2021 looks like moving forward, kind of thing. So between Lisa and Laura, what are you guys doing from a day to day? What are you doing to focus on your marketing in 2021?
So what I like to do, basically, like I said, I do enjoy business planning. So I break it down month to month, and I kind of work out for myself. I do take a budget and I try and break it up. What do I want to do each month as far as marketing goes? Geographic farming is something that I do spend some on and just working that particular area. The other thing I like to do as well, and it doesn't have to cost a lot, especially for some of the newer agents starting out, but doing some of that social media marketing, boosting posts, boosting listings, areas where you can target that specifically too. What's your niche? What do you want to reach out to? And yeah.
So an interesting comment that you made there, Laura, just to follow up on. So you're doing what does your geo farming look like? Are you the postcard? Are you postcard queen in your neighborhood, or what?
So yeah, you know what? I do some of that. I had some other ideas as far as going face to face with COVID. That didn't happen this year. But just being well known in the neighborhood and getting to know some of the neighbors from a distance, things like that. So again, for newer agents just starting out, it's a great way to get yourself some recognition. That doesn't have to cost a lot of money. But if you are hitting them with the mail, then that's something that you can budget for as well.
I just want to get into that, actually. Sorry, because she brought up some really good points. So, Laura, just a quick question: How long have you been in the business, and how long have you been doing farming? Would you say?
Yeah, so I've been in the business 11 years now. I did have a farm a while back, and then I let that one go. So I've just started again, and I will be coming up on a year of that one.
Okay, so we're probably in the same segment. I've been in the business 11 years. I started heavily in farming. That was one of my niches, one of my big pillars that I used. And I used to spend a lot of money on farming. So if anybody's looking at farming in the city, I will tell you, maybe start off smaller. So I used to do, when I got into the business, I would do 5,000 condos. So I was spending a lot, but it was getting out to the right people. And that's really the key. But, you know, if you go through coaching or any of those things, I'll always tell you to start off smaller. You know, look at like a 500 to 1,000 versus like the 5,000. I mean, the 5,000 did serve me. And then eventually I started dropping it down and only working specific buildings. And so that's something that you want to keep in mind if you're considering doing farming in the city, is definitely look at smaller segments and capitalizing more, because the frequency is important as well. So I had my brand was called Property Princess. And of course, it's recently changed to the Lisa Patel team. But while it was the Property Princess, I had a cartoon character that I would dress up. So I would give her a new attire, and I always had a joke that every time that she got a new outfit, I would get a new outfit too. And that was just my excuse to buy more clothes. But but I would take that cartoon and I would dress it up onto different pieces, and I would farm it out. I would go every 2 weeks. Eventually, I went into a monthly basis. And the key with farming that I want to share with everyone, that it's a long-term initiative. It's not a short-term initiative. And especially when we've got so much, and it's how you view things. I don't look at people as competition. Like, I love David and Laura, but I don't view them as competition. I look at them as more as colleagues. And we're all going to add our own spin to things to make it our own authenticity to it. And that speaks from us. So I think there's like so many points to touch on there, but I'm going to now like throw it back to you guys, David and Laura, to add anything else on that part of like farming.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you touched on a little bit, consistency is key. You have to be consistent. It can't be something you do for 2-3 months and then drop off the face of the earth for a while and then come back. You have to be consistent, even if you feel like you aren't getting those results, because it will come. It takes time, especially when you are farming to an area where somebody, you know, they've never heard your name before, and then they start to see that you're consistent, and that's going to get you that name recognition that you're going after.
It's interesting to hear you guys talk about farming, because like, I guess it's just me, but like, so I've been in the business about 15 years, and I'm in Sudbury, which is definitely a different marketplace than having condos all around, that kind of thing. But it's never something I've really got into. And I guess like when I think about like what marketing strategies I'm using, like I remember wanting to be the anti-real estate book guy. Like that was my thing. It's like the real estate book stood for everything is like that I didn't want to be. I wanted to be that thing that was like new and fresh and non-traditional. And now like at the time, like I remember in Sudbury, I was the first agent on Kijiji, looking for like, you know, posting properties and stuff like that. Like now it's like that's formed of, now it's Facebook Marketplace or whatever kind of thing. But I was always wanted to push the boundaries with what I was thinking of. But when you guys were mentioning farming, like technically, I guess you could say like I'm focusing on areas where I'm continuously running ads online through Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, and targeted in on those locations. So technically that is farming for like the modern world. So I guess like it's just, but like the idea of making postcards and stuff like that, like I think I've printed 10,000 before, and I've probably only delivered like 1,000 or 2,000, right? So, and I've never done door knocking myself or anything like that. So the idea of farming is such a foreign concept with myself. But if you really break down what I'm doing, especially when I'm doing my branding play, then it's focused on areas, and I guess that could be seen as farming as well.
And, you know, you brought up a really good point too, David, and that was with farming. And if you are going to do like the whole mail postcard thing, what you do really want to do is really chime in on a budget. Like I mean, I've used Canada Post for years and years and years. So I would say, you know what, find out what it's going to cost for your distribution. Find out your printing costs. But as you're like planning, this is the perfect time for this webinar, truthfully, because I mean, we're going into 2021, and what does that look like if you are going to use that as one of your pillars of marketing, and really, really zoning down on every fine detail. And which brings me to like the next thing that you touched on, David, like newsletters, right? I don't know if you guys do newsletters. So my team was really big on it at one point, not as big on it anymore. And, you know, that's just, you know, the pandemic really makes you, here we go, that word that I really didn't want to use, but they shift into what is important, what's needed in today's world, or what you want to like provide people in terms of value. And if you do decide newsletters, like I remember doing this exercise with my accountant, and where he looked at me and said, "Oh my God, you're spending way too much money." And what are you spending it on? I don't know. And to get that harsh reality of like even CRA calling saying, hi, there's like $500,000 that we need to talk about. And that's when you stop and say, okay, I really need to look at my budgets and what's going on in my business. And when it comes down to where was the bulk of my money being spent, it was spent on marketing. So it's really zoning down on like what 3 or 4 pillars are you going to focus on? And if newsletters is one of them, remember to look at every cost, from the printing cost to the stamp costs, to, you know, who's involved in like distribution. Every little aspect makes a big difference. And I would tell you, like from personal experience, is really pick the few, and you don't need a whole lot anymore to really get out there. It's just choosing what's going to be best and what's going to be most reasonable with your in your budgets that are going to make sense, that are going to optimize. And I think, Laura, you look like you want to touch on that too.
Yeah, no, exactly what you said, you know, having a heart attack when you find out what you've actually spent on marketing for a year. I think that's why I'm so passionate, because I ran into a couple of years where, you know, I'm going through everything, getting all my taxes in order. And, you know, you have that heart attack moment when you find out what you've actually spent. So I think having a plan in advance on what areas you want to focus on, you know, that's very, very important, because there are marketing opportunities that get thrown at us all the time as realtors. Marketers market to us, you know, and it's very easy to say yes to all the things, even though they might not fit in your overall plan. So just being conscious of that and aware of that, and, you know, in the back of your mind, having an idea, if it fits in with your business plan, great. But if not, then maybe it's something that isn't going to get you the best ROI on your marketing dollars.
It sounds like you guys are talking about some pretty crazy dollar values on marketing. When you drop $500,000, I'm like, what? Like, but like, and I think a lot of the people on the call are probably more beginner agents than like people that have, you know, big teams and stuff like that. So just kind of curious, like, what do you what?
You said $500,000, and let me correct everyone. I'm talking about like when you look at your total earnings, and when you come to that point where you're earning, you know, past that 100,000, then going into 200,000, 300,000 growth, or even $500,000 in gross, and you've got CRA that changes everything. And that's where I was coming from, not in spending $500,000 in marketing. That's a whole other aspect. A bit of marketing, because when you're making that kind of money, you're putting more money out. And that's a common trend and error that happens as entrepreneurs, is that we think we get so caught up in the game of like, of working in our business, that we lose sight of the most important things, and that's budgets, right? And what does every little piece cost in order to get like, what does it all associate to? So when you break down your marketing and you're looking at your budget, you're like, wow, where did, you know, $50,000 really go? And then when you start breaking it down into little segments and saying, okay, so X meant just as alone to stamps, just alone to print cost. So it's really getting into the finer details. And these were like hard lessons that I had to learn over my years in real estate. And, you know, and I will tell you honestly, like I've had CRA knock on my door before, and it was just like, okay, no problem. There was no issues. It was resolved. But when it's the bigger issues is when you're getting into the bigger dollar volume of what you're making. And then they're questioning every marketing aspect. That's when you really sit there and say, wow, I need to really be smarter about what I invest in and how I invest in it. And what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that like regardless of what you're spending, like it's it could be big dollars for sure. Like for me personally, like if I think about marketing, sure, there's like the actual, like for me, I'm running Facebook ads, I'm running Insta ads, like I'm doing things online. The better marketing dollars are probably like, because I look at marketing from like two different positions. There's a branding play and there's the marketing play. And the marketing play gets tied to listings. So like every listing I take on, I know I spend roughly $1,000 when in the first, you know, between the, because I pay for staging, like full staging. I pay for photography. I pay for videography. I pay for 360 video tours. Like I pay for all those things for any of my listings I take on. So I tie that to an individual listing, and that's the marketing dollars. And then there's a coming soon ad that we're running promoted. And then there's the like the just listed ad that we're running promoted as well. But then it's also like encompasses the back end system. Like
to make, when you're spending this kind of money, you want to make sure you're tracking. So like having the CRM that's qualified, that you could be doing retargeting with and things like that, that you're tagging, and that you're just able to make sure that you're keeping track of the leads that are coming in. And then you know what to do with those leads and how to, keep these in a funnel to be able to, continue to provide value to those people over the long run. And then the secondary play to that is the branding play. And that's the Dave Kurt or the Lake City brand of the Brokerage now, where I'm really trying to spend my money there, where I'm just like, it's more feel good pieces. Maybe it's, tying, like one of the things we do is like, I'm just now going through it. We're counting. I think we're going to give out 500 Christmas cards, and every one of them is going to have a $10 Tim card in it. Right. So like little things like that, that's more of a branding play, where it's just like I'm not going to see a return on my investment if someone's going to be like, oh, I'll call Dave because I've got a Tim card with his sticker on it saying Merry Christmas. It's going to be more of that long-term play.
I was waiting for my card to come in with your gift card in it. But can you give us like an example of like, how much would that cost? Like when you're budgeting, how would you put that together? Like, how would that look?
So it's a good question to tie, like, how do I plan my budgets? My budget, we're just going through our year end right now. And so we're just trying to, do a better job of tracking where we're spending the money. But I know every year that I'm spending like this year it will be about $5,000 in Tim cards, but then you got to buy stamps on top of that. Then you have to buy, your actual your actual cards that you're sending out. And then it's just the time to go through and, send a Christmas card list. This is just like the start of it, basically, where we all in that position, but I really try to make a position of every year being that sending that personal card to anybody that I'm seeing as like somewhat of a repeat client. Right. So like I have my list, and then my team all has their list as well, kind of thing. So it's that 'tis the season where we're all wrapping up. Yeah. So like I think it's from every individual, like if it's my first year, my first 3 years in the business, that list is not going to be 500. It's probably going to be 30 or 50 or 100 or whatever that's going to look like. And then you think about how, like, if I was to really look at these people, I'd say, okay, well, let's separate this into like, who's my A client, my A people that are like, these are the people that are giving me constant referrals. Like I'm in constant contact with them. And maybe you want to do something special. Maybe you give them a bottle of wine, maybe you give them a bottle of champagne or whatever that is. So you can tie your budget based on that. But I know when I'm planning for my next year right now with 2021 around the corner, we know that like if we're trying to get X number of listings, we're gonna be spending X number of dollars that are tied to those listings. We know that like from a branding play, we know like for my strategic planning, like individually at the office, like I want to grow more in 2021, so I have to allocate resources towards that. So I need to spend more money on that branding play for the office as well. So that's it. Knowing that that's important to me in 2021, I have to allocate more resources there.
So I have to tell you guys, we do have a question that's come out, and it says, in terms of farming, how do you choose which area to target and market toward? So that's a big question. I'm gonna pass it to Laura first, and then I'm gonna throw in my 2 cents, and then
yeah. So I think you can look at this from a couple of different approaches. One area you could target. There's different, I guess, demographics you could target. But ideally you would want an area that's high turnover. So maybe, starter homes, and then they're going to move on quickly once they start a family, something like that. High turnover was definitely something to look for. You could also target first-time home buyers as well. So, maybe there's rental apartment buildings. You could target first-time home buyers by farming an area like that. So that one's not so much listing focused, but for someone starting out, that might be an option as well. So those are the 2 areas that I would recommend starting with. But don't start huge, find a smaller area. If you have a very large high turnover area, the cost can get a bit overwhelming. So maybe look for an area that's a bit smaller, and somewhere that you're familiar with. If you already have a bit of a presence in an area, that would be something else I'd recommend too.
And just to add to that, I would say, maybe you specialize in something. Maybe it's recreational property, maybe it's cottages, maybe it's condos, maybe it's residential homes, right? I would look at like, what am I really focused on? What stands out to me, and what do I know the most knowledge about? And maybe that's where you start targeting. In my case, I focused on condos. It's something that I love. And of course, if you're going to do condos, it's easier to just do one building. And really, until you own that building, don't move on to any others. Stick to, and it's going to take time. Because I'll be very honest with you, a lot of times if you're going to do farming and it's going to be in the condos, a lot of times you're going to witness your material go into the recycling bins. And it's going to be one of those hard hits, but you're going to eventually say, it's okay. You know what? I'm going to keep going. And eventually they'll recognize my brand one day. So that's something to definitely keep in mind as well. And other aspects in terms of farming is really looking, even, I say this in the nicest ways. Some of the most successful farming that I've ever seen from other realtors even is in their own prospective neighborhoods. Becoming the expert in your neighborhood. And I say this because I've seen so many longtime veterans of this industry do so well in the neighborhoods that they live. And because they spend so much time there and they can optimize on so many wonderful things that happen or take place in that neighborhood.
Like I'm not doing traditional farming like you guys are talking about, but from my perspective, and like maybe like what I would see farming for 21st century kind of thing is not the post office. It's like more of just a Facebook targeted ad. But like the other places, yeah, sure. Like I'm focusing on where I live because this is my community and I know it. Like there's a reason I live there is because I love it. I know the schools. I'm involved with the parent council at the school. Like I'm involved with the local charities and stuff like that. So I have my pulse on this neighborhood, and there's a reason. Like it's a passion of mine, right? So when I do a branding play, that like especially if I have a listing in that neighborhood, I'm upping my marketing dollars because I want it to be even more readily apparent that like Lake City's in this neighborhood again, or we're selling another home in this neighborhood kind of thing. It's frustrating when you're driving home from work and you see a sign that's not yours. Like that hurts. And it's just like every time I'm like, what could have I done better to get that listing? But from my perspective, so one of the things, like I've got two different podcasts that I run. One's real estate focused and one's community focused. But my community podcast, I had our principal on to talk about their kindergarten night last year. Like I usually have maybe like between 50 and 75 listeners per episode. And that one there, I had like 300 listens, which was like, that was super successful in my mind because like I was in the community, I was talking with something that parents actually cared about and was able to make that connection. And then again, I'm tying myself to, like, as Buffini would say, like I'm the mayor of that town, right? So trying to position myself, not through a mail drop, but like through every other way possible on how to be tied to that community, whether it's setting up at like, in the olden days at a festival or something like that and giving out free cotton candy or whatever it is, but like just tie yourself into that community the best you can.
And you know what, and this is the great time to do that with your last words, David, is like tying yourself into that community. I mean, with the holiday season, so literally around the corner, this would be the best time to optimize on that. It could be, whether it be something as small as like a token, like a chocolate or whatever, or a chocolate bar. This is a great time to like spread some love and cheer, especially in a year that unlike any other. But we did get another question in the queue, of course, and that is, what is the percentage of the GCI you allocate for marketing?
It's a really, really tough question to answer. And the reason is, like, again, what's like for branding versus marketing, because like maybe you're a buyer agent focused and you're not spending the money on, like, listings cost a lot of money to be able to like properly expose them and properly get them ready for the market. And if you're tying that under the marketing dollars, well, now your marketing budget's gonna be quite higher. Like if you're making $100,000 a year, you're probably spending between 15 and 25%. And if you're listing focused, that might even be higher than that, right? So like it can be a big chunk to eat up money. And I know people that specifically say like they're super proud that they don't do any advertising or any promotion, and like those numbers can be super low, and they're able to work their database and they're just very comfortable and confident with that, and maybe they're at 5%. So I think anything more than 25%, like maybe you're known for what you're spending and you're getting amazing return on your investment or something like that, or you've got that great strategy of a long-term growth. But between 15 and 25 is what I'd probably say is pretty reasonable to be spending. But you guys can take over.
Yeah, I know, like myself personally, I'm around 15 to 20%. And there have been years when it's been much higher. So we've gotten that, under control a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really necessary to be spending a whole lot more than that. There are different, things that you can do to capitalize on those marketing dollars that you're spending, right? So, as far as taking advantage of some of the boosted posts, doing something like that's going to be a lot more cost effective on a listing than doing a mail drop postcard on that same listing. So if you're looking at, in terms of where to spend those dollars, definitely taking some of the online approaches, it would be a way to do that as well.
And I mean, there's so many things that you can actually put into marketing budgets. I agree with you guys. I used to spend a lot more, and that was just because I had my hands into everything in terms of marketing. But I've significantly reduced my costs, and I think I'm down to about 12% at this point. There is another mention in there that somebody has used Morris Marketing. I remember using Morris Marketing in my past as well. And they mentioned that they've been using it and it's paid for itself in the last 11 months. So there you go. So there is good marketing tools out there. They do cost a fair bit. They could cost a little bit more money. So it just depends on where you're located. If it's something that value, people will definitely identify to it a lot more. That those costs can pay for itself very easily.
I'll jump in this. And like, it's true. Like there's always another company that's going to sell you something that you can use to distribute through your community or your farm or whatever you're focusing on. But honestly, like, especially if you're a new agent, like I was at one time a more subscriber just because my dad was, and like I look at it as the old school approach. Spend the time, the energy, like spend the 4 hours, 3 hours to write something meaningful yourself. And like put that out, like that's going to be so much more like, even though your time and energy is involved and maybe some postage stamps or whatever, but if it's truly valuable information to your marketplace, then like that's going to be way more valuable than anything that's going to be templated from a company you're hiring. And like, great, if you're not going to take the time and energy, sure, go with one of those companies. And there's a bunch of great companies out there that are offer those services. But like I know one of my like I think one of the top people out there that's doing this is Chuck Charlton. Like his email database is so valuable. People read it every single month. Like, and I subscribe to his newsletter just because it's such a great, valuable insight, right? And I chatted with him just about it last month. And like I've started something like that just coming out of COVID, where I track my weekly stats, and I call it my 5 Bullet Friday. And I put my 5 thoughts on the housing market that week. What are my 5 takeaways? And like, we're going over, I'm like, this is the amount of, about how many sales we've had. This is the amount of listings we've had. Like, what's that shift like? What's that balance like? How many multiple offers are happening? And then I just kind of, that's valuable information. I've heard from so many people that are like saying, we sit around our, like they'll get together around their office on Friday afternoon and read that email together as a group. Like that's amazing to hear from my perspective. And like, that's local insight that I'm taking the time and energy to put together, and I'm becoming an expert in their eyes, right? So it's the long-term play, but put your own local spin on it, and you're going to get a lot better value from that. Repeat his name, please. Like if you're wondering, Chuck Charlton, he's like, I think they do marketing so amazing. They're out of Milton. They're just absolutely fantastic agents.
Yeah. Sorry, Laura, did you want to add anything else in regards?
Yeah, I think just, David's talked a lot about building on community and just being present in your community and showing up. Especially this year, I just, taking those A-list clients and just dropping off a little something to them. A lot of them are really appreciative of it. That's actually what I was doing this morning, just dropping off a little gift for some of my past clients, and, the appreciation that you get from it. And those are the people that you want, to focus on, to stay in touch with, to build that community with, and they will refer business to you, especially if they've had a great experience working with you. So I think that's just, very important to stay present, stay hyper local in your communities, especially this year, supporting the local businesses. So, the clients see that as well. And it just shows that you're very community focused.
I think there's 2 different ways. Like, you could spend lots of money, or you can spend a little bit of money. It's just about spending more time and energy in your own business. And like, how much time do you want to outsource that, or do you want to focus yourself? I think the best option is to always focus it yourself, but some people just don't have the time or energy. So.
And just to go back a little bit, because we've given them so much food for thought. I mean, we've talked about farming. We've talked a little bit about like drop-bys. You know, that was like, I think Buffini's favorite thing too, is Popeyes. There we go. And so I think we should give them a dry run of things that we would include in a marketing budget. You know, David, you touched a little bit on this, and that was, we talked about the cost of of houses, like staging, photography, you know, what really falls under a marketing budget. So I'm just going to open it up to all of us to really discuss what elements are we thinking about when we're talking about marketing and putting together a budget, because really and truly, that's overwhelming on itself, because there's so many pieces to the pie to touch on.
Yeah, I think even getting back to basics, you know, signs, directional signs, open house signs, when we can use them, factor those into your budget. They cost money, so that's something, you know, that often gets overlooked, but there is an expense there as well.
I actually think that the number one, like, even if you're a brand new agent, the number one thing you should be putting into your marketing budget is your CRM. Like, that's the number one thing that everybody needs. And that's the biggest mistake that I see agents across the board make, is they don't start tracking from day one in this business.
But you know what,
like,
but to add to that, David, I mean, like, one of the key points, if you're starting off in the business, you know what, even using an Excel spreadsheet just to begin and tracking everything on there is a great starting point. And then taking it up a notch, right? Because there's so many CRMs out there too, and it's really testing what works best for you after that point.
Yeah, and there's even free CRMs if it's if it's a costing. But if you were starting to say, okay, how am I going to spend my first $100 in this business, or $1,000 a month in this business, or $5,000 a month in this business, like, it really comes down to spend on the basics. Start, like, your CRM. Try to track 3 wow factors about every client. Try to remember how they take their coffee, their tea. Try to remember, like, at the home inspection, like, what type of furnace filter they have. Like, if you were smart enough to just drop off a furnace filter on their doorstep once a year, like, how great of an agent are you? Like, you are like 10 out of 10, like, blowing everybody else away in your business from something as simple as dropping off a $3 furnace filter.
And just further to what you said, so in their contact on my phone, that's a great place to save how they take their coffee. You could save in what type of furnace filter. And so in your contacts, you just have to look them up, and you know exactly what it is that they take.
And CRMs have also gotten more sophisticated now, where they can even connect you to their online communities, right? To their Facebook channels, to their Instagram channels, all of those things. So if you want to get a little bit more active and learn more about either your hot list or your existing database, those are great tools. So the CRM is one aspect. What other things did you guys recommend in terms of marketing budgets?
So for me, again, like, if I'm tying it to a listing, like, I'm paying for the staging. I have my own staging warehouse. I have my own staging furniture. I have my own moving vehicle and stuff like that, that we're loading the house up, we're destaging it. I pay for the cleaner. I pay for the photos. I pay for the videos. I pay for the Matterport. I pay for all that stuff. So I know roughly what it takes me. Like, the 24 hours into a listing, I know how much I've spent on that listing. But the bigger thing that you want to be able to do when you're focusing on these things is you want to always know who your buyer is. So, like, when I go to spend money on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, like, I'm not just spending money. Like, I know who I'm targeting, and I know Facebook's just switched up a lot of their backend, and I haven't even chatted with we have a Facebook girl in our office that kind of handles all of our marketing. But I haven't really, like, we're getting ads rejected and like, left, right, and center. I've heard this is happening across the province since Canada introduced a lot of the stipulations that they did in the US. So just realize that this is par for the course right now, and we're just going to go through some learning experience right now. But know who you're targeting, because if you're just spending $1,000, $500, $100, or $10 on just like a boosted post, like, you're wasting your money. So, like, know who you're spending your money on and who you're trying to attract. And that's always, like, every single listing we take on, myself or my team, I'm like, who's the buyer? And sure, maybe we don't have an exact, but, like, you get to know these neighborhoods, and you get to know the inflow and outflow. And, like, if it's a 2-story house, that's like you're probably not going to sell to a retired couple, you know, like, it's like, so know who your target market is.
And David, could you give us, like, an example of how much, like, your team would invest either on a monthly basis for, like, Facebook ads or Instagram ads?
So again, it's tied to the listing and stuff like that. Like, from a branding play, like, we're probably we're spending a little bit more than the average, just like with what we're doing. I'm thinking it's probably in the range of probably like $2,000 a month on Facebook ads, the actual ad side of it. Like I'm paying for our website and our CRM and stuff like that in addition to it, but probably, and it's billed in US dollars, whatever, but I think it's about 2,000 a month is what we're spending on the actual Facebook ads.
And is that including your like Facebook guru in-house? No, okay.
No, that like she's a staff, and so like there's overhead on top of that stuff for me, but like the actual like my budget that's coming through Facebook is probably in the $2,000 a month range. But like we were a team of 3, we've grown to a team of like 6 or 7 kind of thing now, and like we're doing, I think we did about 150 transactions last year. So like that's just the size of the business we're at.
And I think, further to that, for somebody who is just starting out, and, play around with your sponsored posts, try different targeting, set up a couple different ads on the same listing and see which targeted results are getting you better results. So you can do it, fairly inexpensively with, if you've got one listing, play around with it and, just track it. Tracking everything is the key to making that work.
Yeah. And like it's like there's that simple tool that you can actually go online and see, like if there's a team you're looking up to in your marketplace or somebody else that's doing a lot of Facebook ads, you can go online and search the exact ads they're running right now, how long they've been running the ads, and see kind of, the comments and stuff like that are associated with them. So like maybe you want to like search that and like, like not like it's a lot of marketing is copycat. So just seeing what works for them, seeing what doesn't work for them and putting your own spin on it. Right. So.
Good points. And just to add to back on both David and Laura, I would just say, it's start off small, make it a smaller budget, like even if it's like $50 a month, and then work your way up, right? It's trial and test and error. It isn't that on the first shot that everything's going to happen. It takes time. And that's really the key with marketing. If you've ever read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, what did they say? They said like, it's that 7th time, right? Like we will test, we'll put it out there, and guess what? Nothing. And then it's revamped, try again, keep going. So it's the same concept as when we went back to our initial conversation about consistency and really building on things, right? Do you just keep trying and trying, and maybe you've got to twist it and turn it a little bit until it actually does make headway. But so we've now added here, we've got CRM, we've talked about Facebook advertising or Instagram advertising. What other things would you guys say to add to the marketing budget?
So, and like even before, like if you're spending $50 or whatever, but like really focus on that customer experience. Like how can you make that customer experience such a wow thing? And like, maybe it's taken out to lunches or whatever. Like if you have a smaller budget, just focus on the clients you have and build this amazing, amazing experience with these people. And that's what's going to give you the referrals. That's what's going to give you the word of mouth. Like that's what's going to make you stand out as an agent in their mind, and not just during the transaction, like 12 months a year, right? So like trying to figure that out on how to be relevant in their lives and like provide value constantly. So like that's kind of what, again, like these Tim cards and stuff like that are there. It's a small gesture right now, but it's just like, how do we stay relevant and how do we provide value to these people 12 months a year? So.
Yeah, staying in touch with your past clients, it's huge. Even, simple reminders, change the batteries in your smoke alarm, little things like that. Like just stay in touch with them, find excuses to call them up, ask them how they're doing. Find those things in common. If there's something, in the community that you think an event that is going to apply to them, invite them to it, something like that. Just really working those past clients. It goes beyond the transaction, and basically create those relationships for life.
I'm just going to go a little bit back, guys, because we got a question on how do you search ads on Facebook to get the details? Can you please elaborate on how you do this? Does anyone want to touch on that one?
Yeah, like that's the comment I made, and I'm going to try to include in the link note, but basically like there's a link you go to where it's like ads manager / I think you have to have an ads account or whatever, but ads manager / like whatever that company is, and it's going to show you an active list of what they're running right now. I'll try to include the link in the show notes there as well.
I know that we got another question on what kind of marketing did you find was the least effective? And that's that's where the trial and test comes in. Like I will say my number one client is my referral source. So that's the one, of course, I think we all feed the most, right? With giving different levels of value, whether it be like in David's case, he adds the extra gift card into the holiday cards. But feeding that every month with value is probably your best bet. And Laura, did you want to add anything like in terms of your least in your experience?
So I used to do like the billboards, a lot of that promo stuff that I quit doing, and I reallocated some of those funds. Some of that I saved because I was spending a lot on that. It was a great conversation piece as far as name recognition goes, but there was a lot of it out there, and I don't think that I needed quite as much. My business has actually grown since I've kind of refocused where I was spending some of that marketing money. So I think just being more intentional with where it goes rather than just, I'm here, I'm everywhere, be a little more intentional with what's behind it.
That's actually a good point, because that made me draw on my own personal experiences too. And I would say, but I would, if I was to redo anything, I wouldn't invest in like newspaper ads and so forth. And I stopped doing that a long time ago. So depending on what brand you come from, but my brand company behind it likes to, for example, signify newspaper awards and stuff. So I am not a big component of believing in awards, right? Because it's like, what does that say to the consumer? I mean, sure, it's a feel good factor and I'm proud of my team, but we don't invest money in advertising that we won an award or any of those things. So I actually think those are the least. I think that money, that taking like that $200 newspaper ad and like David and applying it into more social content is much more needed, or having really good content on your social channels would be a better investment. David, do you want to add?
For me, it's like I think I hit the nail on the head earlier, where I'm like, everything about me and my business and my team and my company is like the anti old school agent. Like, we're real estate for 2020 or plus, like we're real estate for the future kind of thing, right? So like me purposely avoiding, like, sure, I could put an ad in a newspaper or a magazine or something like that and get extra views on it, and maybe there's some return on investment there. And I hate the comment I always hear is like, oh, I only have to sell one house a year and it's going to be worth its money. Like, no, because you could have allocated that money to something else that had 10 times return, right? So I just really, like, my personal brand is not old school. It's like, I want to be future. I want to be the guy that's pushing the boundaries and stuff like that. And because of that, I want my marketing dollars to go in that direction. So for me, the biggest waste of money I could spend is like on a newspaper ad or something like that. So like, again, everything is, I want to be aligned with where I want my brand to go.
Right. And that also brings up a bigger picture too, is like, as you're putting together these budgets, we need to start thinking not just in the now, but what does this look like 3 years from now, 4 years from now, and 5 years from now? We also got another question in the queue here about recommendations for CRM. So I use 2 CRMs personally. So I do have Spear, and I still do have Buffini's CRM. And it's just because I've had that for a long, long time. And I actually like it because it also does tell me what calls to make every single day and all of those things. But I'm going to now pass it over to you guys to share what CRM systems that you're using.
So I'm using Exact Contact right now. Actually, for the longest time, I was just tracking everything in an Excel sheet. So I finally upgraded to a proper CRM. And I like the reminders that it gives automatically. So you can, if you take the time to set it up properly, it can actually do a lot for you in terms of, taking some of this downtime. And then when you do get busy, you still have those reminders, and it's a lot easier to stay consistent with what you're doing.
I remember I sat in, I think it was called NurtureCon, and it was like the top, like Inman kind of promoted or whatever. And I've got a few friends that were presenting, and it was like the top 50 agents in all the US that were there. And it was going to be 5 days of online courses and stuff like that. And sitting in the course, like there was like 38 out of the 50 people were using Follow Up Boss at the time. So like, I'm like, whatever they're using is like, it's like, I need to be looking into this, right? So we'd switched over everything. I can't remember what we were, maybe Buffini or something, but we went over to Follow Up Boss, and I was using that really effectively. Like, I liked it quite a bit in the last 6 months. So on the back end of my marketing, I'm using Curator. Like, they're handling my website. They're handling a lot of like our helping me generate the content. Like every week I have a Facebook, they're like, this is the messages, this is the marketing you have to be doing. They created a templated blog for me, and then I just make it local, read it over. How do I make these points local? But they've switched it away from Follow Up Boss and towards Chime. It's apparently like Chime and YLopo is what I've heard is the most advanced in terms of like being able to monitor. Like when people are actually searching on my website, it doesn't have to be like, oh, they're looking for a house between this price range in this area. Like the more houses they search, the more it becomes smart system and the more intuitive it becomes. So that's going to send them more listings like that. It's a really good lead generation system, but like the frustration that I'm having right now and that I'm bringing my team is I'm like to me, a CRM is sure lead generation is great, but it should be more on like the nurturing. So like, that's why if I need to get a second a CRM for a lead for a more nurturing focus, apparently there is the ability with the Chime. I haven't looked into YLopo, but Chime is, from what everyone I've heard about, like they say Chime is like the CRM of the future kind of thing. So that's what we've been using lately. It's really good for lead gen. Like I think it needs some work, or at least we need to work on our side on the nurturing.
I'm just going to add there, like in my systems, I've used Buffini's system for probably about more than 10 years. And I love it for the fact that, you know what, you can still do your budgets in there. You still know who your clients are. Like my clients are all broken down from A, B, C's, and D's. And of course, I love the fact that I have my daily task on there. And then of course, using Sphere, it's taken it to the next level. So like David mentioned, that whole extra experience and really connecting, learning more about your client base. So it does it can connect you to your client online through their Facebook channels, all of that stuff. It can provide you with more detail about who your customer is. So those are some to keep in mind, but there's tons of them out there. I would honestly say like trial and test, like really go out there, pick out a couple, you know, even take some of our recommendations and test it out for yourself first to make sure that you're comfortable with it. And that's really the key to even CRM systems, is taking the time to really learn the system so that it works for you, because people will automatically get a CRM system and most of the time do nothing with it when it's a powerful tool that can take you to other levels. And I'm going to throw in there one part that we didn't touch on, but David, you did mention, and that's of course websites. That's another big piece of marketing. Do you guys, and anybody want to talk on that one?
It's like there's so many poor websites out there, I think. So like if you're going to have a website, like it's just as a piece of branding material, sure, have whatever you want kind of thing. But if you're actually trying to use your website, you need to be putting constant content on there. Like Andrew Fugley was a friend of mine, and he runs a bunch of this, like the Facebook. I responded to one of the questions in the Q&A, but like he actually did something where he would like people submit the websites, and then we'd go through and kind of critique them and stuff like that. Like there's cheaper options. I think one of the better cheaper options out there is what's his name, Agent Locator. And like he's out there, like every trade show you go to, every like involvement, he's like fantastic. I can't think of his name right now, but he's like very involved. If you send a message to him on Facebook, he's probably going to answer himself, that kind of thing. So that was a great, like, I know we were using that before. I've stepped up my, like, I spend quite a bit on our website in the back end, like, but it's like the full system behind the scenes, and I'm okay with that, kind of kicking up my marketing into that side of things. But yeah, it's a full package. Start small, but make sure that you're updating it. Make sure you have constant content or something like that. If it's just like an online business card, realize that's what it is.
Yeah, I think, and you can even play around with some of them, some of the different website companies that are out there, and find something that you like, and find something that's a little bit interactive. But like David said, update it. Nothing's worse than if you're trying to find an agent and you find a website that hasn't been updated for 5 years. Is that somebody that you're going to want to work with? It doesn't necessarily give a good impression. So stay up to date on it, and just make sure that it's updated and it's relevant.
And to add to that, being that we're going into the holiday season, this is a great time to actually maximize your website if you have one. So for example, my team every year, we do a couple seasons where we do giveaways. And the way that we get people to respond is by either through social media or to chime onto our website. Because if they're not on social media, at least they can send us a message on the website so that they can get their entry into the goods and giveaway. So that's another way to also get more people active onto your sites, is by using those sources to really connect with you. And I'm going to now move it because we've got a couple more cues here into bold leads. So we've got, what do you think of bold leads, or those marketing companies where you pay for leads? Is that something anyone has tried, and does it work? So I'm just going to add my 2 cents there. I do have somebody on my team who does pay for bold leads every month. It has paid for itself. I will tell you, a lot of the leads that he's gotten in the last couple of months were not so great. But he's gotten, I'll give you an example. Last year, he closed 3 really good deals from bold leads, and it worked out for him. So that was and this year, you know, a lot of the stuff that's come out of there hasn't manifested as of yet. So I think it's also a longer term process, but it's also a costly process. So you've just got to be able to and ready to invest the money. In his case, you know, he's spending almost $1,000 a month on bold leads. So it did meet his value. Do you guys want to add anything? I don't know if you touch on bold leads, if you do any of those.
You know what? I've never actually done bold leads. I haven't paid for leads or any service like that. So most of my business has been organic through that sense. So yeah, that's
it kind of brings me back to that point where, like, that's, do you know what, it's worked out for him, but that's $12,000 a year that he spent that he could be allocating that budget to something else. Sure, he did 3 deals from it, so great. And maybe that's like one of the things that he wants to do, and it's lower hanging fruit. So all the power to him. But we're in this world, and it's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse. That people are looking to sell us leads and sell us things, because there's these third company parties that are offering value online, and the consumer is the one that's searching and being like, oh, this is a great experience. I'm going to like give them my information, and then they're just selling it back to you. No harm in being if that's what you want to do, and if you have the capacity to be working with those extra leads. If you wanted to avoid that stuff, I was trying to think of the name. I just searched my phone. Like I don't know if bold leads charges any percentage or whatever, but there's companies that charge bigger percentages, like, and there's no sign up fee. So I know, like, I get like these random messages and be like, oh, someone's moving to the Sudbury area. Are you interested in taking this lead? Like, and they might be looking for like a 35% referral or something like that, as opposed to what would be a more of a standard referral for like giving it to another agent or something like that. But they're not charging me anything, and I could just have the chance to work with this person and pay a little bit bigger referral fee. So at the end of the day, they're just companies that are online selling you stuff. So the more you could put your position, like Laura mentioned, like the more you could be the one providing value, and then have the consumers reaching out to you, then that's the end goal. But a lot of people aren't there yet. And, it's tough to get there. And will you ever be, these companies that are spending big dollars on it? Not on a global scale, not on a, like, even a more wider scale, but maybe to that neighborhood, that farm, you'd be able to provide, the insights way better than a bold leads or any of these other companies that are spending dollars are able to provide it at a very hyper local level. So try to focus your advertising and your message to that hyper local level, and that's where you're going to see the biggest return on investment.
And just to add to that, I want you to remind everybody, like, you're creating a business. I mean, for my teammate, my team, that's what works for him. He's not going to, he's expanding his base on his networks in a different way. So for everybody, it's going to be a different experience, but I'm with you guys. I've never invested on any kind of lead generation in that sense, or where you're paying for a monthly leads to come in and filtering them out. But I will say that it's to take this more as the relationship side. You're building relationships. You're going to ask for that referral. You're going to build on more referrals based on the experience you're providing. And we do have another question. But before I get to that question, I was just going to throw in there, what are you guys spending in terms of, are you giving gifts? Are you giving closing gifts? And what kind of budget are you putting there in terms of closing gifts?
Do you want me to jump in first? Yeah, I struggle with this one. And honestly, it's like, like, I don't want to be like, oh, every client deserves $100 or $250 gift or something like that. I really try to, like, we make personalized as much as we can. And again, I'm not great at this. Like, I've dropped the ball a lot, but we try to make a personalized gift basket. Like my whole brand is like, I really love Hudson Bay. Like it's kind of like, I see it as Northern Ontario luxury. So like, we've got very similar color scheme and stuff like that in our logo. So usually, like, I'm trying to get like a really nice Hudson Bay blanket. They could be like upwards of $300, but if you buy them on sale, they might be 100, 150. And like, I've actually had somebody like really, really, really well-off people that just would never spend $300 on a blanket ever. Just be like, Dave, I've always wanted one of these things. I've never, had one, kind of thing. So that's something that they're going to keep it on their couches. We use it in all of our staging. Like you'll look at our pictures and you'll see the Hudson Bay blanket, or you'll see the Hudson Bay colors worked into it, kind of thing. So it's those stripes that it's kind of become synonymous with my brand. But yeah, between 100, 150, 250 depends. And like the bigger part of that is really trying to personalize it. Like, make those notes. Like, maybe they love wine and you get them like a really nice bottle of whatever type, if it's red or white, or maybe they like hockey and you're getting them something like a cool Toronto Maple Leafs little addition, or like Ottawa Senators or whatever. Like, that's more important than being like, oh, here's a gift card for $250 in my mind.
Yeah, I definitely try to personalize everything as well. And some clients you just will naturally spend a bit more on than others. But yeah, try to keep it within the $100 to $200 range. Just depending on the client and what it is. Sometimes you spend a bit more, and I'm okay with that because that it's something that's meaningful to that client. I did used to do the gift card thing, but there are people that they just sit in a drawer. So I'd rather give them something that's meaningful to them, than just having another gift card that's thrown in the drawer and they've forgotten about. So, like David said with the Hudson Bay blanket, when they see that, then they'll constantly be thinking of him every time they look at it. So, it's just another point on building on that client experience.
So I'm just going to be a little different out there. I used to do a lot of client gifts, and I actually don't do client gifts anymore. I do send them a little token here and there, but I stopped doing like closing gifts, and that works for me. I'd rather take them out for an experience instead, have a great dinner with them versus any of those things. And I also want to put out there one more really important reminder. If you are going to do client gifts or any of those types of things, to be very careful of what will be considered acceptable from CRA anymore, because a lot of things they have taken out of that equation. So I know, Laura, you mentioned, you used to do the gift cards. From an accounting perspective, a lot of accountants are actually saying to go back to the gift cards because CRA is zoning down a lot more on what we're spending. So just to keep that in mind, just a quick note, I'm going to move on to our next question, which is, how much time do you allocate towards your marketing on a daily or weekly basis? I'm struggling with responding to clients' demands, taking people out, searching properties for people, renters, and I'd like to dedicate more time to targeting sales and improving my personal brand. Sorry, just a quick note before we answer that question, because it's a loaded one, so we'll digest it and break it down. But even on the rental aspect, if you guys are going to do client gifts on a rental aspect, that's where a gift card might be handy. It could even be a coffee card. It doesn't have to be elaborate. And depending on your marketplace and where you're selling, it's a different story. If you're selling a $1 million home versus a $500,000 home, there's so many different things to keep in mind as you're considering or even not considering, and versus giving an experience. But now we're going to go back to and I had to bring that up because she brought up rentals, which is a good point, because many of us start off in the business doing a lot of rentals. But how much time do you allocate towards your marketing on a daily and weekly basis? So let's cover that first. On a daily and weekly basis, how much time do you allocate to would you say, David?
It's like, again, it's going to be based on it's going to be different from marketing and branding. And like myself, I have a full team around me right now. So I've got 2 admins, and one of my admins is like an amazing videographer. So she's doing we're doing a 12 days of local right now. So she's filming those. I'm doing 2 podcasts a week. So she's editing those and putting those out. We're sending constant emails. We're doing stuff on marketing constantly. So she's got a full-time job around that. So it's a bad example to look at myself, I think, but I kind of look at it, if if you're too busy that you're so much of your time is spent with clients and stuff like that, and you can't afford the time, then you need to be hiring an assistant. Like you're like, if that's how good business is for you, then like hiring somebody even part-time or sharing an assistant with a few people is like, you know, where you need to get some of those things off your plate so you can better allocate your time and energy. But even like, if I was a solo agent starting out tomorrow, I've got 2 new teammates that are just fresh starting out kind of thing. Like they're putting so much time into their Instagram posts, into their stories, really focusing on having a story every day, into the content they're creating, because the content you create right now, and that's marketing, is content creation. Like that's what's going to keep you busy in 5 years from now. One of my most successful teammates is he started from scratch. He's been in the business 4 years, and he's now actively turning business away because he's just too busy. And it's because he started doing like online content where like his game is better than anybody else's in Sudbury, and he's doing it at a very, very high level. And now like people just automatically reach out to him all the time. So start that now, and you're going to position yourself in an amazing place in the future. And if you're too busy to do it because you're too get an assistant and get some things off your plate.
And Laura?
Yeah, it's hard for me to break it down. I wouldn't say per day, but I definitely do have a few hours a week I have set aside. I do try to get some things, you can schedule posts, get things put together that way. So I do make time for that. But I wouldn't say that it's, necessarily something, this much time per day is allocated. I just, I have that time set aside. So I'll do what I need to get done during that time. But yeah, I would say, probably a couple hours a week I spend on it at least.
Thank you, Laura. And, just when I read that question and look at that question, it takes me back to, I guess, my younger self in this business, where that's all I did was work, and worked so much in my business and on my business that it was just overwhelming. And I think the key to any of that is is really taking your calendar and allocating time. And so I know that it's hard because you've got demands coming from you left, right, and center, but it's the only way that you're going to get through it, is making sure that you're also putting in time for yourself, making sure that you're scheduling your clients in your calendar, as well as saying, okay, you know what, this hour is going to be dedicated just to marketing. So I will say, like, I'm with even my schedule, everything is in the calendar. Otherwise it's not happening. And so for marketing, I have it set every morning by a certain time. And then there's like the touches and in the afternoon to the evening. So that's how I operate mine. And now moving to your next point, because I know this is going to be our last question to this series. And then we're just going to wrap it up and have some fun. And hopefully wherever you are, that you're having an awesome day, because we're going to celebrate it with you. And so, the next part of that question is, I'm struggling with responding to clients, taking people out and searching properties for people, renters, and I'd like to dedicate more time to targeting sales and improving my personal brand. I think we covered that really, guys, right? Like David, Laura, you agree? I mean, you guys both added some different food for thought there. And I think really it's going to come down to calendar and scheduling. Yeah. Anything else is the key. So on that note, from my heart to all of you guys, I hope you are having a fantastic year, and I'm going to wish you all an amazing 2021, and that you rock your marketing budgets in every way. And that David, myself, Laura, we're always happy to chat with you. But I'm going to now pass it over to David to say some last words.
Honestly, I know that there's probably a lot of people in the call that are starting their business out right now, and like time is what you usually have of the essence. So put the time into doing, like, how can you provide value to those around you? How can you be the expert? Always think about marketing as like, what can I create that I can't Google? And if you can be doing stuff around that, and even if you don't have a website, that's fine. Like, just put it out on your Insta stories, or on, like, put content out wherever you can put content out. And it's the best thing you can do. Like the number one piece of advice I'm giving to new agents that are joining us right now is, I'm like, the content you're creating right now is going to build your business in 3 and 5 years from now. And the more you can realize that and try to create evergreen content around that, because the consumers of tomorrow are not going to be asking their parents who they bought a house from. They're going to be going on Google. They're going to be going on these websites and searching people out, looking for reviews online, and looking to see what kind of value that individual is bringing to the masses. So the more content you have, and you've been able to position yourself in there, and starting out, all you have usually is time. So this is the time where you want to be putting into building that brand, building what you're an expert in, whatever you want to focus on being an expert in, and building that library of content right now.
There you go, folks. From David, that's keep building, keep content. And now we've got Laura. Take us home, Laura.
Yeah, last words, be consistent. So whether you are taking the time to create that content, whatever you're choosing to do, be consistent with it. You might feel like it's not working, you get frustrated after a few weeks, but keep persisting. Just be consistent. And that's, people are silently watching you. So if you're consistent with it, it takes time, but business will come to you from it, from the people who are watching from the sidelines.
Thank you, Laura. So consistency. So before we end off, we just want to remind you, we love being OREA YPN volunteers, right? Give it out to these guys. They're the volunteers. It's the exciting part. So we're asking you to get involved. So, you've asked us a million questions. Please bring them back on, check out our social channels, even message us. We're happy to answer more questions, or even the OREA YPN Facebook page, or any of the channels. Put your questions there. We can get some of those answered, but please become a volunteer. Sign up. Deadline is March 12th. David, why are you a volunteer?
Honestly, you meet amazing people. Like I always say, like you're this is the product of the people you surround yourself with, that kind of thing. And like volunteer real estate has been so good to me in my business, is it gets me outside of my local marketplace. It makes me introduce me to people like Lisa and I have known each other for probably 10 years, because we've just ran into each other at different conferences and stuff like that. Like that's amazing that like I've got people like the president of Trev that, like just from being involved and being able to like be out and about, and like we've watched each other grow up in this business and things like that. And it's so amazing, right? So you meet these amazing people that are high achievers, and people that are like very that care about the business and care about the industry around them. Just
to echo on that, David, like I think we both had that moment of like, oh my God, you're a young person, so am I. And we were just like, yay. This was like the first time into organized real estate. And we got so excited from that. We're like, we kept dreaming big. We're going to do this together. We're going to do this together. And here we are years later. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to take it away from Laura. We love you, Laura. Why are you?
You know what? There's so many opportunities. Like you said, you get to meet people from all across the province. So you get re-energized, people who are doing things a little bit differently. So you get some really good ideas that way. And also you get to learn more about the industry from an inside view of things, which is, it's great to be able to take that back to your clients. So I started in the business really young. So, being involved and having some insight on things, you can go talk to your clients, and it just helps build that credibility also with them. So, sometimes you find it hard to be taken seriously as a new agent, and that's just, that little bit of extra that can help give you an edge.
There you have it. So lots of great reasons. So to become active, give back to your communities. And I tell you, it will be rewarding. And from all of us here, have a safe and happy holiday season. And we look forward to connecting with you again and seeing your application by March 12th. Bye, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.